You're 6 years old, you just fell off your bike, your knee is bleeding, and before you even feel the pain, something strange happens. Water starts pouring out of your eyes. Not because your body needs it, not because dirt got in. Your eyes are producing liquid for a reason science still can't fully explain. Now here's the part that should stop you cold. Every mammal on this planet, every elephant, every dog, every chimpanzee has tear ducts. Every single one of them can produce tears to protect their eyes, but not one of them cries because they're sad. Not one of them weeps at a funeral. Not one of them tears up watching their child walk away. Not a single elephant in all the millions of years elephants have existed has ever shed a tear because it felt heartbroken. Only you do that. Only humans do that. And nobody, not a single scientist on Earth, can fully explain why. Most people never stop to think about crying. It just happens. You get sad, water comes out of your eyes, and life moves on. But stop for a second and actually look at what's happening. Your body is a survival machine. Every single function it performs exists for a reason. Your heart pumps blood to keep cells alive. Your lungs pull in oxygen because without it, you die in minutes. Even the strangest human behaviors, goosebumps, yawning, blushing, trace back to some ancient survival purpose. So what survival purpose does sobbing serve? At first, this seems easy to answer. Obviously, you might think tears clean the eyes. And that's true, for one specific kind of tear. But here's where it gets strange. Humans don't have one type of tear. We have three, and only one of them has anything to do with cleaning your eyes. The first type is called basal tears. They're on your eyes right now every second of every day, keeping them lubricated. You don't notice them because they never stop. The second type is reflex tears. Cut an onion, get sand in your eye, and your body floods it with liquid to flush out the irritant. This is pure biology, pure defense. But the third type is where everything falls apart. Emotional tears. These don't appear because of dust. They don't appear because of onions. They appear because you watched your father walk you down the aisle, because a stranger on the street was kind to you on your worst day, because you finished something you worked on for 10 years. And here's the detail that should genuinely unsettle you. Scientists have chemically analyzed all three types of tears. Basal and reflex tears are almost entirely water and salt. But emotional tears, they contain stress hormones. They contain proteins your body doesn't release in the other two types. Your body is doing something biologically different when you cry from emotion, which means this isn't a leftover reflex. It isn't an accident. Something in you was built deliberately to do this. Well, here's where the mystery deepens. If crying from sadness gave any survival advantage, you'd expect to see it somewhere else in nature. Evolution rarely invents something once and stops. If a trait is useful, it tends to show up again and again across different species because natural selection keeps rediscovering good solutions. Wings evolved independently in insects, birds, and bats. Eyes evolved independently more than 40 separate times across the animal kingdom. But emotional tears? As far as science can verify, they evolved exactly once. In one species, us. Think about that. Dogs whine, dogs whimper. If you've ever owned a dog, you've probably sworn they looked sad, maybe even seen wetness around their eyes after visiting the vet. But when researchers actually test this, measuring tear production during genuine emotional distress versus normal baseline moisture, they find no evidence dogs cry from sadness the way humans do. That wetness is basal lubrication, sometimes irritation, not grief pouring out through the eyes. Elephants are famous for what looks like mourning. They return to the bones of dead herd members. They touch the skulls with their trunks. They stand in silence for what looks, to us, exactly like grief. But even elephants, as far as any confirmed observation shows, don't produce emotional tears. Chimpanzees, our closest genetic relatives, share almost 99% of our DNA. They scream in distress. They comfort each other after fights. Primatologists have documented behavior that looks remarkably like empathy. Still no emotional tears. So here's the question that should be bothering you right now. If a trait doesn't help you survive, if no other species on the entire planet across hundreds of millions of years of evolution has ever needed it, why would evolution give it to us? Evolution doesn't do favors. It doesn't create features out of sentiment. Every trait that survives generation after generation survives because it does something. It helps you live, or it helps you reproduce, or it helps someone who shares your genes survive. So what is crying doing for us? For a long time, scientists had a tidy answer. Crying releases stress. It's a pressure valve. You cry, your cortisol drops, you feel better? Case closed. It's a satisfying explanation. It even sounds true. Most people report feeling relieved after a good cry. But when researchers actually tested this in laboratories, something inconvenient happened. The data didn't agree. In multiple studies, people who cried alone, with no one around, no one watching, didn't reliably feel better afterward. In some cases, they felt worse. Their mood didn't improve. Their stress markers didn't consistently drop. This should stop you in your tracks. If crying exists purely to relieve internal stress, it should work every time, for everyone, regardless of who's in the room. It doesn't. So the pressure valve theory, the one taught in classrooms for decades, turns out to be incomplete at best. Something else is going on, and the clue was hiding in plain sight the entire time. Look at when people cry the hardest. Not when they're alone in a quiet room. It's often when someone else walks in, when comfort becomes possible, when there's an audience, even an audience of one. That detail changes everything, because it suggests crying was never really about you. It was about them. Here's where the story takes a turn that feels almost like a detective story. Imagine you're a member of an ancient human group tens of thousands of years ago. You live in a small band, maybe 30, maybe 50 people. Your survival doesn't depend on your strength alone. It depends on the group. If the group turns against you, you don't just feel bad. You die. Alone in the wilderness, without fire, without food sharing, without protection from predators, the odds are close to zero. In that world, communication isn't a luxury. It's survival infrastructure. But here's the problem. Words can lie. A person can say, "I'm fine," and be falling apart inside. A person can fake a smile. A person can pretend to be tough, pretend to be strong, pretend not to be suffering. And other humans, being human, can be fooled. Except for one thing. Tears are expensive to fake. Genuine emotional tears come with a whole physiological package. Reddened eyes, a trembling voice, disrupted breathing, flushed skin. It is extraordinarily difficult to consciously produce all of that convincingly on command, which means across evolutionary history, a person crying was sending a signal that was hard to counterfeit, and a hard-to-fake signal is exactly what a group needs to trust each other. Suddenly, the tears on your face aren't leaking weakness. They're transmitting information, real, verified information. I am in genuine distress. I am not performing. I need something from you. This is where researchers introduced an idea that reframes the entire mystery, something called the attachment theory of crying. The idea is this: emotional tears may have evolved specifically because they trigger a response in other people, not in the crier, in the witness. Studies have shown something remarkable. When people are shown photos of faces with tears digitally added versus the same faces with the tears removed, the crying faces are consistently rated as more in need of help, more trustworthy in their sadness, and more likely to receive comfort. Even though the facial expression underneath is identical. Read that again. The exact same face, the exact same expression. The only difference is liquid on the cheek, and that liquid alone was enough to change how people responded. Tears aren't just a byproduct of sadness. They are a message, written in a language every human being can read without ever being taught it. But this creates a new problem, a darker one. If crying is a signal that says, I need help, it also says something else, whether you intend it to or not. It says, I am vulnerable right now, and in a world with predators at both the four-legged kind and the two-legged kind, announcing your vulnerability should, in theory, be dangerous. A crying human is a distracted human. Tears blur vision. A sobbing person isn't scanning the tree line for threats. If survival were only about avoiding predators, evolution should have eliminated crying, not preserved it. So why would something this costly, this exposing, this risky, survive for hundreds of thousands of years? The answer only makes sense if you accept one uncomfortable truth about our species. Humans are not built to survive alone. Here's where the pieces finally lock together. Humans evolved into the most cooperative species on the planet, not despite our emotional vulnerability, but because of it. A species that can broadcast genuine distress too costly to convincingly fake, is a species where members can actually trust each other's signals. And trust is the foundation every large-scale human cooperation is built on. Tribes, alliances, families, entire civilizations. Crying is small, personal. It happens in a bedroom, at a funeral, in a car alone, at a red light. But zoom out far enough, and it's connected to the exact same mechanism that allowed early humans to build coalitions bigger than any other primate group. The same mechanism that allowed strangers to trust each other enough to trade, to form alliances, to raise each other's children in emergencies, to build cities. Tears are proof that vulnerability, expressed honestly, was never a weakness in human evolution. It was infrastructure. It was the quiet, invisible technology that let a fragile, clawless, slow-running ape become the only species on Earth capable of building hospitals, writing symphonies, and sending machines to other planets. Because somewhere in our deep past, we learned that admitting I need you could be safely broadcast to another member of our species, and instead of being abandoned or attacked for it, we were helped. But here's the honest, uncomfortable truth this story owes you. Despite everything researchers have uncovered, the chemical differences in emotional tears, the trust experiments, the infant crying connection, the social regulation of when and where we cry, no one has definitively proven why emotional tears specifically evolved. These are strong theories, backed by real evidence, but the full picture is still incomplete. Nobody has caught the exact evolutionary moment this trait appeared. No fossil records tears, no ancient skull can tell scientists whether a Neanderthal wept beside a fire 40,000 years ago. And maybe that's the most fascinating part of this entire mystery. One of the most common, most human things you will ever do, something you've done in moments of your deepest joy and your darkest grief, remains at its evolutionary core only partially understood by the species that invented it. Every other creature on this planet suffers in silence. Every other creature grieves without a single tear. But somewhere in our ancient past, something rewired inside the human body. A signal that could not be faked, aimed directly at the people around us, saying the one thing that no words could say fast enough. I am not okay. Stay with me. And the fact that it worked, that another human being, generation after generation, chose to stay, might be the real reason our species is still here at all. So the next time tears well up in your eyes, know this. You're not malfunctioning. You're doing the oldest, most human thing there is. You're asking not to be alone.